all of you are smart enough to understand the reality of this world is that we have no guaranteed amount of time. And for many, many people, this next week is going to change everything about how they live day to day, right? I read the story, actually I saw the video this last week of this man. Just a normal father and husband and employee, and life was going along fine for him until he wasn't feeling very good. He went to the doctor, they ran some tests, and they sat down with the doctor one day, and the doctor said to him, "I'm sorry, it's Lou Gehrig's disease." So if you don't know about this, this is a really debilitating disease that takes away your ability to control your own body. And in a very short time, this turned into this, sitting in a wheelchair, unable to change his own clothes, unable to bathe himself, unable to feed himself. And this man, this father, this husband had so many dreams, gets one medical report that changes his life forever. That is going to happen this week all across this country, right? You're all smart enough to understand that. There will be people who have a call from the doctor that changes their entire life. And all of a sudden, their life is never going to be the same. And they're going to know, we all know that we're not going to stay here, but some people are going to find out this next week how much time they actually have left. And it changes them. It changes them. I started this series last week and I said, I want you to imagine that you're the one, that it's you, that this next week you get a phone call from your doctor and the doctor says, "I'm really sorry to tell you this, but you have this and you have 30 days left to live." I mean, what would change in your life? Things would change so significantly. This is the verse that I started with last week. I really want it to be like the theme of this series is, "Lord, remind me how brief my time on earth will be. Remind me that my days are numbered and my life is fleeing away." That last phrase is just so gripping. It's fleeing away. You know, right now in the woods right now, there are deer fleeing away from men and women with guns, right? Because it's deer hunting season, so they are fleeing. And the imagery is gripping, and it's like, our lives are fleeing away. Take a look at this. That's me. At 8 or 9 years old, I don't even know, 8 or 9 years old. About 43 years ago, some of you are doing the math. Yeah, I'm 51. But I remember that shirt. I loved that red, white, and blue shirt. I wore it all the time. That was just me a moment ago. And I turned around and this, right? This is our lives. Our lives are fleeing away. They're fleeing away. And we're headed towards a transition in our lives. And it's happening fast. And I started thinking about it. If I got that message this week, if I went into the doctor, it was interesting because I had a doctor's appointment this last week. So the whole week I'm like, oh no, what's going to happen? It was fine. But I thought, what would change if I was given that message? If the doctor said to me, "I'm sorry, Brian, it's terminal, you have 30 days. I started thinking, I made a little list. I wouldn't care what happens to my favorite sports teams anymore. I would not care. I'm not going to see the end of any of their seasons. I wouldn't care about the new season of anything that I like watching. I'm not going to make it to season 4 of Stranger Things. Sorry, I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to care about any other season of anything coming out. I wouldn't care about a promotion at work. I wouldn't care about my bonus. I'm not going to make it to bonus season. I wouldn't care about any trip I'm planning. I wouldn't care about any of the house remodeling projects. All of a sudden, everything would change, right? And we talked about this last week. If you got that message that you only have 30 days to live, the number one thing that would be present in your life is you want people. It's what the person, last week I showed you, I showed you the video of someone who's dying, who's actually passed away now, and all she cared about, she said, all you care about are family and friends. That's it. That's all you care about at the end. You want people you love around you. It'll be the first priority. The first thing that would change is all the other stuff that takes you away from people you love would be gone, and you would be focused on the people that you love and care about. It'd be the number one. But the number two thing, and actually you could debate whether it's one or two, is you'd want to know what happens now. What happens now? I've done this job for over 30 years. This has happened to me multiple times where I'll get a phone call. I remember one time I got a call. This young girl was dying. She was only in high school. It was terminal. She knew the number of her days. And the mom asked me if I would come and sit with her in the hospital and just talk to her. And so you talk about a lot of things in hospitals when people are dying, but one of the things that they all want to know is, what now? What happens to me now? What's next? And you'd want to know what's next and what do I need to do and how do I make sure I'm ready for this transition that's about to go. And so what I've been asking you to say in this series, I really want you to think of this series, if we would make these positive changes in our lives, if we found out we only had 30 days to live and we were diagnosed, shouldn't we be making those positive changes now anyway? I mean, if that's how we're going to live when we get that message, shouldn't we be living that way now? So we're in this series called 30 Days to Live, and we're going to continue it by talking about this. I want to show you how to start living for eternity now before the diagnosis, because it's so important. So I want to ask you to open your program, and inside you'll find these notes. I want to ask you to grab your notes, a pen, something to write down as we go through this. There are some things you can fill in the blanks. Welcome, of course, to those of you who are watching online. So glad you've tuned in today. If you're watching on our website at penuelchurchlife.com, you have these notes right there. If you're watching on YouTube, at our YouTube channel, you also have the notes right in the comments section. So let's jump right into this. So the first thing that has to happen if you want to start living the way you would be living is you should value, and we should all value, preparing for eternity. And I know this is a tough sell. I know that this is one of the hardest things I have to talk about, so bear with me. I have an illustration I hope will help you get this. So the first thing is we should value preparing for eternity. And you really have two options here. You can value preparing for every moment of your time on earth, or you can value for preparing for eternity. So let me give you this. So some of you see this rope up here. If you're watching online, you can see this rope right here. And it's got this little part at the beginning that's colored in. So I hope you can see that clearly. Hopefully all of you can see that here. If you're watching online, you miss this because this rope just goes on. And it goes out the door, it goes down the street, it goes all the way up to Dodgeville, and then it goes up to Madison, and then it goes all the way over to Milwaukee, and then I threw it across Lake Michigan and over to Detroit, and it just keeps right. Well, maybe it ends right there, but it goes. I want you to use your imagination. I want you to imagine that it goes that long. I want you to imagine that it just keeps going on and on and on, and that it never ends. And I want you to understand what this represents is a timeline of your life. And this colored in part right here at the beginning, this represents the time that you and I get on earth. And then there's a transition point at some time for all of us, no exceptions, all of us. And your transition point, may be shorter, maybe a little bit longer, but it's coming. And then on we go into eternity, and this just goes on and on and on, and it never ends, it never ends, it never ends. Millions and billions and trillions of years on and on into eternity, and it never comes to an end. And yet, how do most of us live? I mean, which part did you spend most of your time thinking about this last week? I mean, isn't it true what we do? We live for this. I mean, this is the focus of our lives. We want more now. I mean, this is all that matters. I want to think about how can I get ahead? How can I get a little better ahead? How can I get more? How can I get more successful at what I do? How can I get the girl, get the guy? How can I get the American dream? I want more of this. And what we really do, isn't this true? What we really do is we live for this little part right here, right? At the very end of it. It's like, oh man, I can't wait to get to retirement. I cannot wait to get to retirement because this is going to be awesome. I'm going to get to retirement. So then I'm going to, golf every day and sleep in every day. I'm not going to work anymore. It's going to be awesome. It's like, this is what we live for. This tiny little part at the end of this tiny little part in our existence. That's what we live for. As a matter of fact, you want to see how it's gotten. This is the latest statistic. 18 to 25-year-olds were polled, 4 out of 5, so the top priority in their life by a wide margin, wealth and personal fame. That's what I want. I want it all right here. I want to be rich. I want to be famous. This is what I want. This is what's going to make me happy. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to just live for everything right now. I'm just going to stack it all up as high as I can, as much as I can in this tiny little part right here. And this is how we're living in America right now. Now, Jesus, it's not a new thing. 2,000 years ago when Jesus was here on earth, he encountered this too, and he knew that this was the grip of our materialistic world that we live in that constantly offers us eye candy to distract us from what's real. Over and over and over again, it tries to get us to stay focused on just this and ignore all of this going on and on and on forever. And so Jesus told a story about a man who was doing just this. He said there was a man who was very wealthy. He was a wealthy farmer, and so he was so good at what he did, he just kept stacking up stuff, and he built bigger and bigger barns. It was all about bigger, better, more for this guy. It was a slogan, it's like, could be our slogan, right? Bigger, better, more. Bigger houses, better quality stuff, and more of all of it. So that we fill our garage, we fill our attic, we fill our basement, we fill storage sheds, we fill everything we can fill. And so on, and he was doing the same thing 2,000 years ago. And so finally, he built this enormous building, stocked it full of his rewards of his harvest. And he's like, whew, now I can take it easy. I'm right here now. So now I can just have this great time with what's left on earth. It's going to be awesome. And Jesus says, here's how the story actually ends. Jesus said, but God said to him, you fool. This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? Now, that's, by the way, the question you should all be asking about yourself. I've got stuff stored up. Who's going to get what I have prepared for myself? The answer? Somebody else. Because when that time of transition comes, it won't be me. And then he goes on to say, and this is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself but is not rich toward God. In other words, the person who does this, and you just make it all about this, he's saying they suffer a total loss, complete loss on the day of their transition. When this transition happens, and it could happen at any time, right? That guy thought he had 20 years left, 30 years left, just to enjoy all the wealth, right? And did he? No, he didn't have any more time. And so because it was all about this, and now all of a sudden he enters into eternity, he says you suffer total loss if this is what you do. Complete loss of everything. And obviously that's not what Jesus wants for any of us. Because in case you don't know, and you haven't heard this, it's been a while since you heard it, do you know the purpose of your life? Do you know what the purpose of life is? The purpose of this time on earth is about preparing for the time that never ends. The purpose of life on earth is to prepare for eternity. This is like the warm-up before the game. You don't go all in on the warm-up so you got nothing left on the game, right? It's like you're gassed during the warm-up before the game. That would be silly, right? No, this is about preparing for what comes. Life is about preparing for eternity. That's why you're still here. As one author said, wise people build their lives around what is eternal and they squeeze in what is temporary. Is that how you're living your life? Are you living your life so that you are focused on what's eternal and squeezing in what's temporary? Or are you doing what I think most Americans, even American Christians, are doing, is focused on what's temporary, and sometimes maybe a little time for something eternal. This is the perspective we need to have. We need to understand that our time on earth, this short little time we have here, is all about preparing for the time that never comes to an end. That's why we're here. And so what I choose to do is I choose to value this more than I value what I can have here. That's what I choose. I choose to value what I can have here more than what I can have here. You make your own decision about that. So once you understand, though, eternity and what Jesus is saying, then the second thing is, if you understand what I'm saying, and that you understand that life is about preparing for eternity, then what you need to consider is, this. You need to consider becoming a servant in this world. Becoming a servant in this world. Now, that may not make sense, and you may not have any idea why that's so important, so let me show you. If you have been to Penuel at all in the last few months, we've talked about this organization in Dodgeville called New Beginnings. If you come into Dodgeville and you go past the hospital and you come to the library and turn right, if you know Dodgeville at all, you can turn right, you go down 2 blocks and you see this house. And it's got this sign on the fence that says New Beginnings. It's a husband and wife who are incredible servants in our community. Incredible servants. They can't stand the fact there are so many needy people in our community, and so they did something about it. They opened up their house, and there's a little tent out front, and you can see it, on Saturday morning from 8 to noon, they have this open for free for anybody. Everything in this whole space is free. Everything. Nobody pays anything for it. If you need something, you come there, you can have it. They have food, clothing, you see kids' toys, and I took this in the summer, so it's different now. And to the left, I didn't take a picture of it, is another entire tent they have right next to their house, and there's tons of clothes and stuff in there. And that door, if you go in, it's a little door, it's hard to see, it's their basement. They turned their basement into basically a Goodwill. And everything in there is free, and you can just walk in, and every week it's different. They got clothes and all kinds of bathroom supplies. I mean, just anything you can think of, and they just spend their time just collecting this stuff so they can give it away on Saturday. And so my wife and I found this a little while ago, and we started just, we went, I was actually moving, and, after I got married, moved in with her, and so I had stuff to get rid of. It's like, we don't need 2 housefuls of stuff, and so they were literally around the corner from my house, and so I found out what they needed, and I started bringing stuff down. And the first thing they told me that really struck me was, there are families in our community that have 1 twin bed for their entire family, and so a bunch of them just sleep on the floor. Well, my goodness, I had lots of kids and lots of beds, and so I just gave them all my beds. Here, you can take all my beds. What do I need them for? Then this last Saturday, we were doing some cleaning, and so we had some stuff to get rid of, and what do? You either give it to Goodwill, right? Throw it away, sell it on a garage sale for a couple of bucks. So I brought it down to them on Saturday, and I was so struck because it doesn't matter when you go on Saturday morning, there are people there because the needs are so great. And the woman who runs this said, oh my goodness, she said, look at this. And there were 2 empty long coat racks. She said, you should have been here at 6:30 in the morning. It opens at 8. She said, the people are already here. Every coat we have is gone. And there's still not enough. We don't have coats for these people. We don't have mittens. They don't have hats, things that we take for granted. How many of you worried about having to put a coat on? How many of you worried about putting gloves on or a hat? And so I went back and told Shanna, and she's like, well, I'll find some more. And she went through the house, and she found more to give. And one of the things she says, I don't know if they could use them, but she had curtains on a curtain rod that she'd never used. She's like, somebody gave these to me, I don't know. And, we'd have thrown them away. Brought them down and said, I don't know if you can use it. Put them on the table. He said, yeah, put them on the table. And there was a woman there. The moment I put them down, she beamed. She didn't speak English. I couldn't understand anything she said, but she was so happy. She was there with her little daughter, and she just picked them up instantly. Favorite possession, something we would have thrown away. Isn't it true that there are a lot of needs in our community right now? You may not be aware of it, but there are a lot of needs in our community right now. There are a lot of people who don't have the basic necessities. And again, if you want to know why you're here to earn as much as you can so you can stack up as much as you can for yourself. That is what you are here for. Get as much as you can so that you can just have more and more and more, and you can have lobster every night, you can take huge trips anytime you want to, and you can have the brand new car every single year. That's why you're here. No. Paul wrote to a young pastor named Titus, and he said, here's what I want you to teach the church. He said, I want you to teach them this so that all who trust in God will devote themselves to doing good. Look at this word. It's not occasionally do good, right? Is that what he says to us? Occasionally as Christians do good. What are we supposed to be? Devoted to doing good. Devoted. Does that describe you? Are you devoted to doing good? Is this defining your life right now? This is living for eternity, right? It's living for eternity. If I make this decision to devote myself to serving others and doing good, I'm making a decision in light of eternity, not in light of what's going on in this world. So let me show you why this is eternal. Why does serving become eternal? Let's go to what Jesus said. I'm going to combine these two together. First off, I want you to understand what Jesus taught is that God rewards serving in eternity. God rewards serving in eternity. For all eternity, it is rewarded. So consuming is rewarded here, right? If I just consume everything I get, it's rewarded right here. But if I serve others with what I have or my time or my effort, all of a sudden it becomes eternal. It counts for eternity. And let me just combine it and go right into letter B, and then I'll show you why I'm saying this. God takes our serving personally. This is why it becomes eternal. God takes our serving personally. These are some of my favorite verses that I'm going to show you. In the entire Bible, I can't even do them without passion because they just create so much energy inside of me. Jesus said, here's what's going to happen. Remember, this is coming for all of us. This transition day right here. You don't know when it is. Some of you will at some point in your life be told when it is, approximately, right? We're not all dying in our sleep. Some of us will be given a time frame. The transition is coming. And Jesus said, here's what's going to happen on that transition day. Some of us, the transition's going to happen. We will step from this temporary earthly world into eternity, and we will stand in front of God, the Father, who will be seated on his throne. And the Son, Jesus, is at his right hand, and Jesus is going to say to some of us this. He's going to say, come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, this is the reward, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. So he's like, I have a huge reward for you. Now, it's like, why am I being rewarded? Look what he said. Because I was hungry and you gave me something to eat, and I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink, and I was a stranger and you invited me in, and I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. And do you know what we say in response to that? Jesus tells us. He says, we look at Jesus and we go, when did I ever see you hungry and give you something to eat? When did I ever see you naked and clothe you? When did I ever go visit you in prison? And Jesus goes on to say, what you did for the least of these on earth, you did for me. You did for me. In other words, every single time you serve another human being, you are serving God. Anytime you choose on this earth to stop making it about you, and you serve another human being, God takes it personally and he rewards it for all eternity. That's why there's nothing more important for you to think about than how you can serve in this world, because it counts for all eternity. So, if you're watching online, you don't often get to see what we're doing as a church. But for those who are here today, they got to hear me talk about, just off camera here is a Christmas tree, and it has all of these cards on it. And these all represent families in our community that are in need, who will not get anything for Christmas unless we do something as a church. And so we have all of these tags. I think there's 42 of them up here on the tree. And each one represents someone in need. And they're like this one that I pulled off at random as a boy. He's 10 years old. And what he would love for Christmas is football, a camera, or board games, or Shark Attack. I don't even know what that is, but it sounds cool. So a stuffed cow. And somebody's going to take this tag. Maybe I'll take this one. That sounds fun. So somebody's going to take these tags, and they're going to go to a store, and they're going to buy them. They're going to bring them back, and then volunteers in our church are going to wrap these up and deliver them to these families on Christmas Day. And then every single one who took the tag, someday, when your day of transition happens and this moment comes, and you stand in front of the King of all the universe, Jesus, with tremendous emotion, is going to look at you and say, oh my goodness, I've been waiting for you. I've been just waiting for you. Because at one time I had nothing. And you showed up with those presents, and you gave those presents to me. And you're going to say, when did I ever give presents to you, Jesus? And he's going to say, what you did for the least of these on earth, you did for me. Welcome to the reward I have for you. Do you get it? Do you get how significant this is? Serving is so significant. So we talk in our church regularly about transitions that have to be made, and there are 3 transitions that have to be made. I'm just going to jump ahead here. When it comes to serving, let's be honest, right? Most Americans spent 0 time this last week thinking about who they could serve, right? There are a bunch of them that did. There are a lot of people who serve in this world, but the truth is, how many of you, personalize it, how many of you spent any time this last week saying, who can I serve for you today, God? How many of you even thought about serving last week? Isn't it true we get just wrapped up in our own lives? We're all busy, we're all tired, we all have issues, we all have stuff going on, more stuff than we can keep up with. And serving is just pushed out of our focus, but serving is eternal. And so we talk about the fact that we need to move from that one where I don't serve into this one where I am serving, but ultimately that's not where Jesus wants us to go. Jesus said, I want your attitude to be the same as mine, which was this last one where I am a servant in this world. This is who I am. Is this your identity? And how you would choose to identify yourself as a servant in this world. This is where we begin. We understand that there's a lot at stake with our time here on earth, and we want to use our time on earth to serve people because we know that it becomes eternal. It counts for all eternity, and Jesus always takes it personally. Now, the third, final thing is this. We develop a radical generosity. Radical generosity. Christians should be defined, in my opinion, as the most generous people on earth. Now, we have 2 choices, right? We can do letter A. We can store it all you can on earth, right? Many, many, many Christians are doing that. They are storing all they can on earth. Everything they can get, they want for themselves, and they just keep it, and they give a token. Matter of fact, one of the saddest, depressing things I've ever heard. Do you know that Christians, during the Great Depression, gave a greater percentage of their income away than Christians now? During the Great Depression, Christians were more generous in what they gave than now. You know what the Great Depression was, right? Soup lines, homelessness, loss of jobs. And we were more generous then than we are now. Paul really fought against it. And this is, I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. It's simply the nature of our world. It is a materialistic world and tells you every single day, countless times, you don't have enough, you don't have enough, you don't have enough, you need more, 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 more. It's always about more. And Paul fought against this in his own heart. The Apostle Paul wrote this in Philippians. He says, what is more, I consider everything a loss compared to the surpassing greatness of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord, for whose sake I've lost all things. Things don't matter. He said, I consider things rubbish that I may gain Christ. So he said, here's how I keep this in perspective. I remember that everything that I'm tempted to go after and set my heart on is rubbish. Now, some of you have a hard time with that, and so I've talked about this in the past, so let me show you examples of this. At one time, this was somebody's dream house, right? Day one, when they moved into that, it was like a fantasy for them. When it was first built, it was beautiful and wonderful. And they were excited, and they had family and friends over, and they showed off their house, and were excited about it, and they maintained it. And then eventually, what did it turn into? Rubbish, right? At one point, every single one of these was somebody's dream. They put the key in the car and drove off the lot with so much excitement. The new car smell. It's great. It's awesome. And they were excited. And they drove around town in it. And they showed it off to their friends and families like, yeah, look at my new car. And here it is now. Rubbish. Every single thing, everything is just rubbish. Now, it may be in pre-rubbish form, but make no mistake, this is its future. Everything you're excited about buying on Cyber Monday or Black Friday or getting for Christmas, it's all rubbish. Oh, you may own the prettiest rubbish around. I mean, your rubbish may be so beautiful, but don't kid yourself into thinking that what you own is eternal. What you own isn't eternal. It's why it can't make you content, and it can't make you happy, and it doesn't bring you joy. It can bring you like temporary happiness. Oh, I got my Amazon package, woohoo, and you're excited for 10 seconds, and then off you go. but it's not eternal. This is its home. It's guaranteed to be going there. So that's why we don't live for rubbish. We don't let ourselves love rubbish. Instead, we fight it. And the antidote to this is to give all that you can. We don't store it up here. We give to the people in need around us. Now, here's why I'm saying this. Look at these verses from 1 Timothy. Paul said, command the church to do good. That's who he was talking to, the church. Command the church to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. So if Paul was writing this to me, he would say, Brian, I want you to stand there. I want you to stand in front of Peniel, and I want you to tell them all, I command you. That's what he says, right? Command them. I command you to be generous, and I command you to be willing to share. Even saying the words makes me feel uncomfortable. But that's what he said, literally said, command the church to be generous and willing to share. But notice, it's not just generosity. Look at the last three words, willing to share. It's that your heart is right about it. It's like you're happy sharing. It's like, I like giving stuff away. Okay? Now, why would we want this? Well, because he said this, in this way they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the, what? Coming age. So they can take hold of the life that's truly life. In other words, I'm sorry to tell you, this isn't life. We're alive, but this is life. This is where you're going to experience joy like you've never known it ever. This is where you're going to experience peace like you've never known. This is where you are going to experience more love than you've ever dreamed was humanly possible to experience. This is the life that is to come. And he says, when you give what you have away, here's what he says. You transition it from being a part of this short time on earth into something being eternal for the coming age, not this age, the coming age. And this is where you're going to want it. Because you don't stay here, but you never leave here. And so when we give out of love for others, we transition. And so I heard an amazing example of it. Let me just show you this. This guy's name, as you can see from the screen, is Orville Rogers. Orville was a World War II bomber pilot. He survived World War II. And since he knew how to fly, he became a commercial pilot. So he did that until he retired. This was Orville around the age of 100. He lived to 102. He died in 2019. Now, the amazing thing about Orville is that he really was careful with his money. He saved what he made, and they invested it. He and his wife really invested it well. But if you know anything about, long-term investments, if you put away money each month, well, their money just accumulated, and they invested in the right stuff. And they made a lot of money on their investments. And so they had two choices. As their income went up, he and his wife, they could, do more for themselves, or they could do more for others. Well, incredibly, Orville and his wife, in their lifetime, gave away over $30 million. He was a pilot, he saved, he invested, he did everything right, and it took off. And as his income went up, his generosity went up. And many of the people they served were just the neediest of the needy around the world, and they just kept, as money kept coming in, they just kept giving it away. So I got a little curious, and I thought, well, what could you buy for $30 million? So you ever been to Hawaii? Anyone ever been to Hawaii? So I went on and Googled expensive properties in Hawaii. So it's hard to see behind the trees, but that is not a series of houses in the front. That whole thing in the front is one house. It's one house. It costs $27.5 million. It has 10 bedrooms, 11 bathrooms, and 17,000 square feet of living space. And it's, as you can see, beachfront in Hawaii. Orville and his wife could have paid cash for this. They could have put down $27.5 million on just the part of their investment and still had millions left over. They could have lived on the beach in Hawaii in a 17,000 square foot home, walking the beach every day, eating lobster every day. They could have lived the dream life, what so many people would think be the greatest life. And instead, they chose to give all of it away. Simplify their life live on what they needed, and give the rest away. Now, 2 questions. Would you have done that? And the bigger question is, was he foolish for doing that? Now, there's 2 answers to that, right? You talk to the world, people in the world, they'll say, what a fool. Yeah, give me Hawaii. I'll live on the beachfront in Hawaii because that sounds awesome. But if you talk to Jesus, because he passed away 2 years ago, so he already had this conversation with Jesus. The moment of his transition, he stepped into the presence of the God who gave him life on the edge of eternity. And that God said, oh my goodness, Orville, I've been waiting to see you. Because I was hungry and you fed me, and thirsty and you gave me something to drink, and I was naked and you clothed me. And Orville said, when did I ever see you do that for you? And Jesus said, well, you did for the least of these on earth, you did for me. And for all eternity, it counted. So I know this is really tough to take in, especially in a materialistic world like ours, which is so focused on what you can get in here now. But I want you to hear this as I finish. Jesus said, the winner in the world, ready? The winner in the world is the one who serves the most and gives the most. The winner in this world is the one who serves the most and gives the most. And Jesus has you on earth right now to be a contributor, not a consumer. What are you? Are you a contributor or are you a consumer? So here are some things that I want to challenge you with as we finish. First, I really want to ask all of you to ask God what he wants you to do. I can't tell you how you should be serving in this world. Shannon and I really take that seriously. We want to know how God wants us to serve in this world. But you have to ask that question. You have to pray and say, God, how do you want me to serve in this world? The other thing is, what I really want to challenge you with is, especially if your basic needs are met, I want to challenge you to set a goal every year about what percentage of income you can give away. And then every year try and raise it. And I'm not telling you where to give it. Give it anywhere you want to give it. Matter of fact, what I am telling you is say, God, where do you want me to give it? And then just obey him. Respond to his promptings when you see a need. Some of you, when I was telling you about the kids that don't have coats in our community right now, that tapped your heart. Kids that don't have mittens, they don't have hats, they don't have coats, that tapped your heart. Do not ignore that. That's a prompting from God. Don't ignore that. Your local Walmart has coats and mittens and hats, and you can do something. And every little choice we make like that counts for all eternity. Now, I did skip the most important thing. If you went to the doctor tomorrow and the doctor said you have 30 days left, the number one question you would want to know is, what will happen on the day of this transition for me? What will be my experience? Because it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, right? I used to ask people, if you were to die today and you were standing in front of God and God said, why should I let you into my heaven? How would you answer him? And lots of people have lots of answers. Well, I've been good. I did good things. I helped people. I served the poor. I did all these things. None of those things are the entrance requirement for being with the Father in heaven. The truth is, Jesus said, if you want to be with my Father in heaven, be perfect as my Father is perfect. Doesn't that make sense? If God is perfect and we're not, we can't be with him. So incredibly, God did something for us. He came to earth. He died on a cross to pay for what's wrong inside of us. Every unloving thing you've ever said or done was paid for by Jesus, so that you can be completely forgiven and you can be with this Father who loves you so much. Let me have you bow your heads. Maybe this is the next step for you spiritually, is to let him give you this gift of eternal life and salvation. Forgiveness. With your head bowed, you can say something like this in your heart to him. Say, Jesus, I'm not perfect, not even close. I've said and done unloving things in my life, and I know it. and I admit this to you. Jesus, I heard you died on the cross to pay for this stuff, so please forgive me. Come and make your home inside of me today as I put my trust in you. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, as we finish up, can I ask you all to just open up your program and grab this little card out of there? If you're regular tender, just put your name down. But then maybe you prayed and asked for his gift of forgiveness. Let us know about that. Or you renewed your commitment, or you have a prayer request you want us to pray for. Then just take a moment to fill this out and then drop it in one of the 2 offering boxes back on the back wall where you came in. If you're watching online, if you go to our website at PennielChurchLife.com, you can contact us through that. There's a little box in the upper right-hand corner that says, I said yes to Jesus.